Today we are going to build a skill together. I create many of them, I use them daily, and I went through all of the official Anthropic documentation to validate what actually matters when you're building one. Devil is in the details. By the end of this talk, you will know exactly how to start, how to build one, and most importantly, what to avoid during the process. Last week we broke down what exactly a skill is. A folder, one file, with two parts, a trigger and the instruction. The description is arguably the most important part. That's the wake-up signal. Today, we're going to build one from scratch. But first, let me introduce to all of the elements that actually matters. If you get this right, your skill works perfectly. If you miss them, your skill sits there and doing nothing, or worse, it's take your conversation as a hostage. Skill Creator is already built into Claude AI. The best part of it is that you just need to ask something along the lines, I want to build a skill. The second best part is how it works. It's super interactive and intuitive. After you say that you want to build a skill, it's simply going to start asking you questions, what you want to create. You describe your workflow and what the goal you want to achieve, and Claude, we're just going to walk you through all of the steps. It's going to build the file, package it into a skill folder, and make sure your description is clear. And after you went through this process, it's just going to ask you to click a button to copy your skill to the proper folder. And the skill is already installed, waiting for your first wake-up signal. Anthropic advised to build the skill after a couple times when you execute the workflow manually, and that really makes sense, because you need to know exactly what steps are involved in the process and what is your dream outcome. And something to keep in mind here is that your first version which you're going to build almost for sure will be not perfect at the first time. You need to evaluate on this, check what works or not, and spend some time to fine-tune it. Before you're gonna start, ask yourself a question, are you really going to use this workflow at least 10 times more? If yes, the investment gonna pay off quickly. But if that's a one-time thing, the time which you're going to waste by going back and forth, it's not really worth to start the process. Here is what we are going to build today. A custom-made to-do list. A couple years ago, I read the book Getting Things Done by David Allen. To this very day, this is one of the books which have the biggest influence on the way how I work. Amongst others, there are two core components of this book. Everything that requires more than one steps becoming a project, and every action needs to be broken down into very specific and actionable steps. Right now, LLM are so powerful that basically whatever you're gonna ask, you're always gonna get a solid response. The only problem with that is that the response is good, but it's not tailored exactly to you. If I would ask Claude now to give me a to-do list after the conversation which I just have, it would give me a perfect to-do list, but it will be not the GTD method by default. Another aspect, something what I really expect right now from Claude, is to give me almost every output as a document which I can easily download. The to-do list is just an example which you're going to use because everybody can relate to that. As more complex your process is, it's becoming more valuable to use the Claude Skills. A skill creator is going to do all of the heavy lifting for you, but there are still a couple things which you need to make sure you are doing right. If you are going to mess this up, instead of using the skill, you're going to start looking the switch off button. And believe me, I know where is the switch button right now. The first thing is how you are going to write your instruction. Claude follows reasoning better than commands. What does it mean in practice? Instead of saying always use this specific formatting, say something between the lines, use this specific formatting because our team operate in Europe and we use European conversion. The rule is exactly the same, but Claude now understands why it matters. Next, include examples in your instructions. Anthropic recommend the structure which is the following. User say this, skill does that, output looks like that. Claude pattern match against examples even better than rules. If you show Claude what exactly the output looks like, it can reproduce the pattern. If you only describe it in words, there is still some room for interpretation. Okay, this is a different angle. The first 2 points were about how to explain. This one is about how precise you're supposed to be. The example on the screen is coming straight from Anthropic page. The vague instruction give Claude room to guess. Specific instruction give a Claude a checklist. Next rule. Claude reads your instruction exactly the same way as a long text. The mechanics are exactly the same. The lost in the middle problem also applies here. If your instruction is really long, Claude pays more attention to the beginning or to the end of the text. Whatever you have in the middle could get lost. How to address this problem? Simply put the most important part in the beginning of the instruction and repeat them in the end. That gives you guarantee that Claude will not forget about this important part. In one of the documents, you can also find a part about making your skill general, not super narrow to the specific example. Your instructions should cover the entire workflow, not just the exact case which you're testing with. If your skills works only with that specific test case, that means it's too narrow. It should handle the variation inside of the same workflow. So now we understand the instructions matter, but this is not the part which decide if your skill is gonna live or die. In part 1, we call this the wake-up signal, the description field that tells Claude when to activate the skill. Anthropic target 9 out of 10 relevant messages triggering automatically, and they say that Claude tends to under-trigger. So how are you going to fix this? Your instructions needs to be more pushy than you expect. They give you the formula for the description, what skill does, when to use it, and the trigger conditions. Anthropic say to push them further than it feels natural. So the guidance says to write description in an over-explicit form. This feels like too much, but that's the entire point. You have 1024 characters to use in your description. The one on the screen is 1/4 of that space. So obviously that's just one side of the medal. The other side is that if you are going to push too hard, suddenly everything falls into the wake-up signal. This is another balancing act using AI. You want the skill to fire without you artificially calling it, but from the other side, you don't want everything to be interpreted as a starting signal. Okay, so we have pushy descriptions and instructions with reasons, but the skill doesn't fire up. Why? The answer might be not what you expect. It's not a setting problem, it's more a design question. So let's talk about fundamental question, why are you actually creating these skills? The only reason to build a skill to show Claude your way of doing things, something different what Claude giving you already by the default. Let me build on the example of the skill we are building. If you are going to create a skill, how to build to-do list, and the method you want to use is exactly the same as Claude giving you right now, you're just not bringing anything new to the table. If what you are asking already match the Claude in build capabilities, the training data, the building methods, there is no reason to load up your skill. A different perspective to that. If Claude gives you the answer and you think, okay, that's exactly what I want, there is no reason to build a skill for that. If you work with Claude and there are certain actions, workflows or tasks that you are doing often, and every time when you're getting a result, you're thinking to yourself, this is almost perfect, but I just need to change this one thing. I would really like this result, but again, I need to change this last part. That's exactly the moment when you want to build a skill, because the default answer of Claude is not really fulfilling your needs. In our example, if I would ask now Claude to give me a to-do list based on my previous conversation, I would not get a GTD style and I would not get automatically the Excel sheet, which I can just download. One more aspect of testing. Don't just test with the exact phrase which you use in the description. Anthropic recommends testing your wake-up signal in different ways. Why? Because in 3 months from now, you will forget what exactly you put into the description, but you still want the skill fire up, which is just gonna describe it in a natural language. The point here is that skill is supposed to fire up whenever I would ask, create me a to-do list. I want to see my GTD list style. Can we break this down to my GTD list? And all of these phrases not necessarily need to match exact way how the description is written right now. If all of the above doesn't work, there is one debug trick. Everything what you need to do is just ask Claude when you would use the GTD skill. Claude reads out the description back to you. Whenever missing from that answer, that's something what you need to add in addition. Okay, so those are all of the 11 important aspects when you're building your own skill. Let's try to use all of them in practice and build one from the scratch. First of all, where you can find the skills. Go to Customize and Skills. Our skill creator is here. In my experience, you don't really need to toggle this on. If you are not able to fire up the skill creator, that's the first thing to change. Let's go back to our conversation. Can you please help me to create a skill? Claude is already reading the correct skill. I just asked Claude to help me build a skill, and he already came up with a set of questions which are very similar to that what we described in the first part. I'm just gonna brain dump everything what I have in my mind, and we're gonna see how Claude will be able to process that. Okay, let's see how Claude gonna deal with that. As you see, my input is not really structured. There is no any prompting involved. I just ventilated everything what I have in my mind. For me, important is that before Claude gonna produce a Google Sheet, I just want to see the preview in the conversation, so I don't need to wait before the Google Sheet is created. As you see, there are some questions which Claude came up. So after the 3 questions, Claude just gonna run this again and let's see what's gonna happen next. This is important part. That's the part which you really want to invest your time. You cannot expect that Claude gonna nail it at the first time. As precise you will be and as much time you're gonna invest in this part, it's just gonna save you time later when you're gonna start going back and forth. Okay, this looks fine. Let's test it. I'm just gonna do some venting right now. Yeah, I think that's it. So can you organize that? Let's see how Claude gonna deal with that. From all of this mess which I just described, Claude was able to just list this out. This is relatively normal. This looks good. Please create a Google Sheet. Okay, so we got our first results. I got my Excel sheet, which I was asking for. This is good. I see all of my actions listed here. Is it perfect? No. Would I use it? Yes, if I would start tweaking this and making this more as I wanted. The point here is that, as you saw, I just dictate whatever I want. Claude just process this, and after approval, from now, always my to-do list will be done in the same consistent way. Claude now is asking me if everything is right. I'm just gonna say, yes, everything is okay, please continue. What happened now? Claude just took all of my feedback, all of the actions which we described, and create this document, which is our SKILL.md file. What I need to do next, I'm just gonna click this button, and that's it. You can find your skill exactly in the same place we just started. Next week, we're gonna focus exactly on that. How to bring this to exactly our liking and how to tweak it, how to switch it, that it's always giving us the perfect output we expect. If you're wondering how this is different to your safe prompts or project instructions, I made a previous video about that. You can watch it here.